everybody. Thanks for coming. My name is Ken Norton. I'm the guy whose name is on everybody's badge here, except my own, so I had to go grab one. So if anybody causes any damage, I'm the one that's going to get blamed. Thank you for coming tonight. I'm really tremendously excited to see the turnout and all these folks here. Josh and I had coffee a few months ago, and we were like, we should do an event for PMs in our portfolios, and we'll get 15, 20 people, and have some dinner. And we started sending out emails, and we said, actually know quite a lot of people in the portfolios, and then we encouraged you to invite each other, and then all of a sudden we had a huge room full of folks. So I think that speaks to both the caliber and the folks that we have in our portfolio, and I think also just the demand for PMs to meet other great PMs and to share ideas and share notes. And so I think that the purpose of tonight is really for you to meet each other and mingle and network. And so we have some conversation up here around PM career and whatnot, but the main purpose to get you all together was to really meet each other and for us to meet you and for us to just have a great night together. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time up here. I want to turn it over to Josh, who's going to start with the panel. And then after we do the panel, I'm going to bring Peter up on stage.
Thanks, Ken. And guys, thanks all for coming out. Like when I was a product manager kind of through most of my career, I was always amazed at how little I met other product managers at other companies, just because you meet so many people inside your company all the time and you're doing all that. And so we did this conference back in April that I hope some of you were able to attend. And then we try to do this tonight just to kind of create events mostly for you guys to meet each other and to interact and hopefully build connections kind of that'll both help trade tips and tricks and create sort of careers over time as people go in and out of different companies. So that's really the goal. And so we'll try to keep this content short, but we thought it'd be fun to kind of at least have some discussion to kind of, as people have kind of been through pretty long careers in product management, and sort of give back some of our great lessons learned too. So I'd love to bring up our panel. Joanna Wright, who's a VP of Product Management at Google. Johanna, oh, I should ask to pronounce names next time, checklist. Johanna Wright, who's a VP of Product at Google. Adam Nash, who's a CEO at Wealthfront. And then Craig Walker, who's the founder and CEO of FireSpotter Labs, or Uber Conference. So the goal of this is really just to kind of discuss sort of career paths. Because one of the questions when I meet a lot of young product managers these days is like, okay, great, so I joined a company and I work on some product for a while. Like, what do I do next? Like, what is the career path? And so I'd love kind of each of you just to start, like, walk us through your career a little bit and really, like, how did you decide or kind of fall into your current role? And sort of what kind of things, in your product career sort of got you there? I don't know if I'm going to start with you, Johanna.
I think I'm probably. Can you hear this? Okay. Sometimes you can just talk and talk like this. What's the story of my career? So I started out, I studied math in school, and I didn't really use computers at all. And my best friend across the hall, we were really cool, and she really loved computers. I really loved math. So she was like, why don't you come to my computer science class? So I was like, no, you should come to my math class. So she introduced me to computer science, and I kind of won because we both ended up math majors. But by the time I was graduating from college, I'd taken a lot of CS classes, and I heard that you could make a lot of money programming, and I was pretty excited about that. So I took a job as a programmer in a small startup that supported Wall Street. So financial, foreign exchange, options trading software is what the company I worked at built. And then I worked in a bunch of startups in New York. So when I was working at this firm, though, they had us meet all of the executives, and I met Tom, who was a product manager, and I was like, wow, that guy knows what we should be building. That would be pretty awesome if I knew what we should be building. So from then on out, I knew I wanted to be a product manager. He just seemed so amazing. I didn't really ever interact with him. It just seemed like the awesomest job. He knew what we should build. I had no idea what we should build. I just kind of did it. So so that's what I always wanted to be. Maybe it's that enough. It's like I just talk forever.
And so Adam, kind of walk us through a little bit of your early career and how you fell into product management.
I was just laughing. Yeah. Sorry, I was laughing just back then. And then, I was laughing at the fact that then you became a product manager and realized that he didn't know it. He was all faking it.
Yeah.
I think I followed a fairly typical path into product. I came out of Stanford as an engineer, computer science, did a co-term in human-computer interaction, so a little bit more design biased. Wanted to start out actually building software, and so I joined a company called Next, which managed to get acquired by Apple before my start date. So
I hear they had really good music on Next.
Yeah. Yes, I didn't get the street cred of ever having a Next badge, though. Although I did get one of the cool T-shirts they had of the Next logo eating the apple, because that was the scuttlebutt that Next really acquired Apple. In any case, I was a software engineer. I was working on frameworks, web objects. And similar to you, actually, I was looking around at jobs and realizing that, as an engineer at a big company, I wasn't really having a lot of influence over the design of the product. I was doing the interface layer, but not making those decisions. And at Apple, a lot of those decisions were made by this role called the product manager, which I had not heard of at school. Now, Apple is an old-fashioned hardware organization in that it doesn't have a product team per se. There's an engineering organization, a design organization, and a marketing organization. And product managers really come out of the product marketing side at Apple. And so I was so excited. I got a meeting with the VP of product marketing at Apple. I sat down, fresh out of school, like a year into it, going like, I'm really loving what I'm doing, but I'm looking forward to moving into product management. And this guy says to me, he says to me, he's like, I don't know of anyone who's moved from engineering into product marketing. And I was like, oh, well, then I'm not staying at Apple, which was unfortunate because I love the company. I ended up joining a startup, which was also too small to have a product manager, but I actually wrote all the UI code. I did all the clients because I had done cross-platform work. Back then, that was in high demand. And as the startup grew, it was the late 90s, so all startups grew. I was like the fifth engineer, but once that startup got bigger and it actually had need for a real product manager, I became the first product manager of that startup. And we went public in December 99 because everyone went public in 99. I went to business school and I did venture capital for a couple years. We'll just call those the lost years to product. And then I ended up joining eBay, and actually a partner at Greylock, John Lilly, I remember showing him my resume after doing venture for 2 years, saying like, okay, take my name off of this. What do you think this guy does? And it's like, an engineer with some design sense and business background, product manager. I was like, oh, okay, that's good. I've done that before. I really came into my own in product at eBay. I did a lot of great projects, learned from a lot of great people. eBay had a very rigorous process. Some of it I don't want to replicate. Some of it I learned from, and some that actually I thought was fantastic. And then I met this guy named Reid Hoffman in 2007. We talked about product for 4 hours over breakfast. And at the end of the breakfast, walking to his beater 92 Accord, he said, well, if you really think that product could be different with Web 2.0, you should think about coming to LinkedIn. We have a role. I was there for 4.5 years. And all I have to say is that, like, for me, I think that the role of the product, it's a kind of natural evolution. As an engineer, you're very preoccupied with building things and scale and seeing where the puck is going. Like, you can't engineer anything for today. You kind of have to know what's coming next to really architect your code well. With design, you start really thinking about, well, it's great if this thing runs in, half a millisecond, but if the user takes 15 minutes to figure it out, like, what did you just optimize for? Like, not the big problem. And then you realize that if you don't have a coherent business around that product or a strategy, you might build the 1.0 and the 1.1, but you'll never get to build the 2.0. It'll never fund the organization to build the 3.0, et cetera. And so for me, there's been this continuity of product of embracing the fact that to build great software on an ongoing basis, you have to solve all three pieces of those puzzle. And I think those pieces come together in the product role.
Cool, that's awesome. A fun fact is, one of my favorite, if you look at my resume, you'll realize I interviewed for a lot of jobs in my career. And one of my favorite interviews ever was interviewing with Adam at eBay. It was this, it kind of was like, I want to be that guy to be a product manager. So, Craig, you've been kind of a different background of founder, found a couple of companies, sold some to bigger companies, was a product manager there, founding again. Kind of help us understand how product management fits into all that.
Yeah, it was kind of a entirely different path to product management. I was actually a securities attorney coming out of Berkeley. representing a lot of high-tech companies down in the Valley in the late 90s, and so was not technical at all. Actually joined one of my clients, Telesoft Partners, that was doing investments into telecom stuff after the 96 Act. And this, again, back in the days, everyone was an amazing investor because everything did really, really well. And this was, particularly telecom infrastructure stuff or next-gen communication stuff was tearing it up. So we had invested in this company called Dialpad Communications that was a little bit of a precursor to Skype, one of the early PC to phone services, was growing like a weed, had raised $65 million, had managed to spend 80, and 2001 came along and there was no more, the party was over and these types of businesses were over. So the fund needed someone to go in and actually try to save this company or to sell it before we actually had to turn off the lights. So that's when I got my first operational experience and really got to know voice over IP super well. Ended up running it for 4 years and turned it around. We became profitable. Got acquired by Yahoo and became Yahoo Voice. And then left to found Grand Central Communications, trying to figure out what can we do beyond just making cheaper phone calls? How can we use this infrastructure and these types of next-gen services to do interesting things that consumers would want? So Grand Central was one phone number for life. It would ring you everywhere, move all your voicemail to the cloud, give you control that you don't have, convert voicemail to text, and really bring old telephony 1.0 into a web environment. And Google acquired us in 2007, so became Google Voice, and I ran that as a PM for 3 years, and then left to go do this. So as a non-technical product manager, it actually was super liberating because I worry all the time about the product and what are the markets and what it is I want it to do, and obsess over how the user is going to do it or engage with it. But as to how it's actually going to get built, I defer to much smarter people than I, and putting a great team together that you trust that's going to be able to do it. And your team gets better every single time you do it. So now we have a lot of the guys who actually helped build the Google Voice platform. So we have a lot of experience in scaling this type of stuff. So it's actually been super liberating not to be an engineer and just worry about the product without worrying about the how of the product.
Interesting. So several of you talked about getting MBAs up here, and a lot of there's a lot of debate for product managers. Does an MBA help or hurt? What's your take on that, and what's your take on that sort of through your career? How has it helped or hurt for those of you who did?
So I'm a professional student. I got my MBA before going back to law school. I never really thought that the MBA helped much, particularly when I was getting it. It didn't seem like I was learning anything. But going through these dark times of 2001 and 2002 and trying to hold a company together and all of a sudden little nuggets would come back to you and you'd realize, hey, guess what? We don't have budget for a CFO. I'm the CFO, and little things came back and figuring out marketing, figuring out, various different nuances of things that you had learned was actually important. I don't generally like hiring MBAs because they oftentimes come in thinking that they know more than everyone, and I'd rather have someone really scrappy who wants to just dig in and dive in. But that said, I was looking at it the other day, and we have 6 MBAs out of 40 people at the company. So
I think that's actually a really common theme. Everybody always talks about how they don't want to hire MBAs, they don't like them, and then they look at their company and everyone has an MBA. I would answer, though, for myself, the MBA was super helpful, and I think the biggest thing it did is lend me credibility. So I went to a small liberal arts college. I worked at small dinky companies. Some of them went out of business. I was looking for a job in New York after the World Trade Center crashed in 2001, and there weren't any jobs. Then when I left my MBA, I got a job at Google, and I don't think I would have gotten that job without my MBA. Now, kind of every day, I just work with engineers, and I don't do anything for my MBA, but I'm sure that I would not be where I am today without it.
Adam, your dark period.
Yeah, actually, it's funny. I'm a little scarred because it turns out if you get an MBA and then spend 2 years in VC, collectively Silicon Valley decides that you can't do anything. Like, seriously, I'll go like, yeah, you seem like really smart. Strategy? No, I get in this argument a lot. I spend a lot of time getting my MBA saying things like, MBAs always say this, MBA, and then my classmates at some point pointed out to me that I was, in fact, going to have an MBA. I think it's like a lot of things in life. I think there are factors of what causes people to get an MBA. I mean, the truth is, it's not hard. Once you get into the school, it's not hard to graduate. And so for some people, they treat it as freshman year 2.0, and they do all the things that they wanted to do again, except at 26, and get a little bit more injured because 26 is not 18. But I'd say that the truth is, I always thought it was like a luxury. I felt I was spending money on something where, oh my God, I could spend. I didn't just read Clay Christensen's book. I did a project with Clay Christensen on how Ethernet was disrupting. I mean, like, it was just an amazing opportunity. So I think like anything in life, we're very familiar with the 10x engineer concept. We know there's exceptional people in every field. When I look at MBAs, the biggest tell for me is, why did they go to school? A majority of MBAs go to school because they think it'll help them make more money. That's a majority of them. A minority of them actually go because they really want to understand how a bunch of this stuff works. I like that second group a lot. I don't like that. I don't disparage the first group. I just don't think that first group does well in technology because that's not how career paths and progress works, and that's not really how the team dynamic works. But I will tell you, as having come out of it and trying to use the time productively, I feel really grounded sometimes knowing that there are dozens and dozens of industries that I will never work in, but I touch from time to time. But I have a deeper understanding about how you build businesses in those industries. Who do they hire? What do they prioritize? How do they organize their process? And I find myself leaning on it at different companies when I realize, oh, this isn't actually a unique snowflake. This business problem isn't truly new to this particular company. Actually, the way they approach quality in manufacturing looks like this. The way they handle task allocation in a service industry is like that. There have been different times at different companies where that's made me less scared and less biased against something that was different, which I like having in my tool chest. But yeah, I still don't love hiring MBAs.
That's great. Well, my confession is I did one semester and then ended up dropping out of the MBA program. But I found, like, even in that one semester, it was really valuable to I mean, the network that I built just from that one semester has been incredibly strong and incredibly meaningful to the last 10 years of my career. And, I think what Adam said about you really learn and you realize, like, what we do in technology is different and special, but actually there's so many businesses around the world that run and they're efficient and they try to really understand how to operate well, and you understand how to, like, take that apart from the accounting and the cash flow analysis. And I still use that a lot, both in what I'm doing now in VC, but also kind of even over the last 10 years of trying to build these companies, you realize it's a lot more. Like when you have a huge sales team at Facebook that's growing, you're like, what the heck does that mean? Like they're not doing anything to build the product. But then you start to understand like exactly what the cost structure is and why that makes the company more money, and it changes the way you think versus like, hey, we just build a better product and everything works. So I know I found even the little bit of time I spent there.
You went through the worst semester.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah, the first one's the hardest.
I could have then partied for another year and a half. So kind of like, but let's go take this kind of MBA question. Like, what are the skills that are really the most relevant to learn and improve, you think, to be an effective product manager and really to grow in your career as a product manager? I mean, it starts by getting a couple of engineers and working with them to help ship something good. But I think, what are the skills that you really want to layer onto that over your career?
I think that there's a lot of obvious ones, and I talked about a few of them, around, focus on the customer, design-based thinking. I think that the technical understanding can help you know what's possible and what's not possible, and I think there's a lot of elements to strategy and business that come into it. But the two things actually I love about the product role that I think you never get perfect at, and you're always working on, is one, this appreciation for what it means to lead. The great thing about product roles is you have a lot of responsibility and not a lot of authority. There's always that moment, by the way, like when engineers figure out, like, wait, I don't report to you. Like it always happens. It's always like, it's like they figure it out every time. It's like wait, why am I, what? I don't, you learn, and that's important. I think even going up to a CEO level, it's incredibly important, because the truth is, if you have to invoke power, that's actually a weakness. That's not a strength. Leadership is strongest through vision, through inspiration, through analysis, through all these skills that you have to build to be successful at product. So I actually think that product can teach you a lot about being a leader, and teach you a lot about yourself, about where you're successful being a leader, how other people are successful, even with different backgrounds. I actually think the one liability I had going into product was, when you're an engineer going into product, an engineer says to you, oh, that's really hard to do. Your first instinct is like, not for me. Maybe you suck, but like I can do that in an afternoon. Yeah, I had to get over that really fast. That is not a productive outcome. It does not lead it anywhere. Software is a team sport, and I think that product teaches you a lot about being a leader in a team sport. The second thing, though, I love about product is it's about this holistic thing. Like product, in the end, I blog about this sometimes, but in the end, product ends up with this responsibility for the outcome, right? You just don't. Well, like good cultures, I think you don't just get an E for effort. It's not just, oh, we did all the right things, too bad it didn't work, right? Like, I'm not saying don't experiment. You always experiment and learn, etc. But the truth is, great product managers, great product leaders win games, right? Like they are known for products they ship, that holistic problem of how do all these pieces come together and actually succeed in the market ends up resting on the shoulders of product managers. And one of the distinctions I found from mediocre or average product managers, which I'm not a fan of, and exceptional ones, is they embrace that holistic problem. And that's why they test, that's why they learn, hypothesis test. All these things are ways of ensuring that in the short term, I don't care whether this experiment comes out or not, but how do I consistently end up in a place where I'm winning games? Because you're not winning for you, the whole teams that start winning games together, they get a real desire for it. You win together, you win the next game together, you play better, you start playing for each other. And so that embrace of the holistic problem, that sometimes very small details matter, sometimes they don't at all, and it's the wrong thing. There's a yin and a yang to everything. But that second aspect of the whole problem, I like that in product management. I think that it's something you never fully learn, you're always getting better at it.
Yeah, I'd say following up on a lot of that is, a great product manager has to have like fantastic interpersonal skills, because you're dealing with engineers, right? And there's personalities all over the board of these brilliant people who you're asking to do a lot, and you're asking them to work super hard, and you have to be able to inspire them, because at a big company or at a small company, big companies, they can pick their projects effectively. At Google, trying to get more engineers on Google Voice, you had to go sell them. You had to convince them to come work on it. And once they were there, you had to convince them that this feature set was the right feature set to be working on. And it's great, because if you can't convince them, you're not going to convince others, and maybe you're not going to convince the market. So it's actually a very good kind of test. It's almost like at a startup trying to convince people to leave their good, high-paying jobs and come join you. You better be convincing. You better have a vision of a great product. So I think being able to inspire and being able to get them to do stuff, and to work hard and to do, 18-hour days and 7 days a week and push for a launch and make sure that it works. That's really, really hard to teach, and it's a little innate. Like it really is. I don't know if it's necessarily learned, but it's something that you got to have. And so that's one. And on the other side, I think the holistic thing, to me, a product manager is like the mini CEO, right? Like you better be worried about everything from the FAQ pages to the customer support to PR to marketing to positioning to price to competitive analysis to what it's going to look like to design to usability to testing. Like you're effectively responsible for the entire thing, and you can't punt. And you gotta, like when you're asking this team of engineers to work, ridiculously hard, you better be working ridiculously hard too, or they will notice. And I've seen PMs at big companies that I won't mention that can set out a long vision, and then they take off for a week during crunch period or something. And it's just you got to be in it and be part of the team. That's the only way you'll get the respect from the guys to do it. But beyond just this one product, you are responsible for it winning. You're responsible for people loving it and for the press writing about it and for partners wanting to partner about it. And that is, you got to be able to do it all.
And I always like to add, the even harder part is you kind of are the mini CEO with all the responsibility on your shoulders without even the authority. Like you can't necessarily like say, okay, like this must get done or we must do it this way. It's still this massive power of influence. Johanna, I don't know if you have anything to add.
I like the answers. I think it was pretty interesting because you said, what are the skills? And thinking of what skills that you're going to develop. Some of it being a PM, you're just thrown in. It's not really skills so much as, I don't know if it's capability or instinct. There's basically three things that I think about with product management. The first is really knowing your product and your users. So really putting yourself in the shoes of your users and just using your product all the time, understanding the situations people are when they use it. The best product managers don't just write specs, they use the products, they test the products, they get a real feel for them. The second thing I think about is tenacity. So just not dropping balls. People don't know what you do, what you want to do. You have to motivate them, but you got to pick things up and follow through and make sure other people follow through. And when people don't like your ideas and don't want to listen to you because you don't have any authority, you got to keep going and keep on with those ideas. So a second important theme for me is tenacity. And the third one is around collaboration and partnership. So at Google, and everything I worked on before Google, my tech leads were always the most important person, and really having a strong vibe with them and us being in the same wavelength and knowing how we're going to work together and how we're going to get things done is really important.
Cool. So my last question for tonight, and then we'll open it to a couple of questions from the group, is a young product manager comes up to you and they say, okay, like I love doing product management now, but 10 years from now, like, what's my career path? Like, what should I be doing? What can I be doing? Is it becoming a product manager? Like how do you answer this? Because I'm sure we all face this, and we've all ended up in different places in our careers.
Sure. Yeah, if someone comes up to me and asks me that, I mean, I look at product managers as literally mini CEOs, and I think a lot of them, or a lot of you guys, are going to be doing your own companies soon, or already are. And I don't know if there's better training for it. I mean, that is almost ideal, because you are having to convince people to join your team. You are having to invite for resources, particularly in a big company, to get even noticed or to get launched or to get PR support, or at a startup, it's the same story. So that to me, and I've done that myself. So that seems like a very natural progression. And whether you become a manager of managers, that's a different skill entirely. And personally, one that I was never very good at. So that's why I went back to smaller companies. But I think that's that really is, whether you like it in a giant company or like it in a startup, you are kind of like the mini master of ceremonies, the director of the movie, and the person who's responsible for it. So it is an interesting path if you're interested in that.
I think the best advice is custom tailored. So when people come up to me, I like to think about the situation they're in, whether or not they even have any product management skills. What seems like they would be good at? What seems like they would be good at? But my advice to all of you, and I think the thing that's been best for me, is to try and find a job where you're going to be engaged and enjoying it all day long, because you're going to spend a lot of your time at work. So that's what I would tell you and any young product manager who comes up to me, is find something that's interesting to you most of the time, and you want to be thinking about it when you're not at work.
Yeah, it's funny, in design there's a technique, storyboarding, right? Kind of to get a real visualization, understanding of how users might really feel using your product. And I think I love it because I love narrative. And when I'm dealing with people, I've always felt that we have some, not a lot, but some control over the narrative of our lives, and we kind of tell our own stories, how we rationalize a lot of decisions. And career decisions actually feel that way. So usually the question I get is not from a product manager who says, well, where I'm going to go. They've already taken the leap. It's usually from a designer or an engineer who says, or an MBA who says, I really want to be a product manager. And usually the first thing I actually do is try to understand why, right? Because I spent a lot of time at eBay moving people from engineering and helping people move from engineering and design into product management, because I had made this move. And of course, it's like, I don't know, it's like the Uplift series. Like you help move people around and help fulfill their dreams. But then I realized that a lot of them ended up unhappy. I'd actually say about 2/3 of the folks I helped in those early years moving over weren't happy with the product role. And it wasn't until I went through that experience that I realized that if you're a designer or an engineer and you want to be a product manager because you think they have all the power, the problem may actually be that you don't realize what superpowers your role is supposed to have, right? Engineers have an amazing power. If they want something to be true, they can actually do it, right? They can actually build the thing, and they can influence thinking, because it's totally different making a decision about something that's already built and proven to work than something that is just a theoretical construct. Designers have superpowers. They have powers over your mind. They literally can use visualization to emotionally influence you, I think, to an irrational level, to want something if they're great designers. And so I really actually, if I see a great designer or a great engineer who wants to move to product because frankly they're frustrated with the organization or process that they're in, sometimes I ask them whether they're just in the wrong organization or process. For folks who are into product, not to avoid the question, I'll just say that I'm obviously a big fan of the product role. I agree with the mini CEO. I actually tend to use the term more, it's a little old-fashioned these days, but it is a kind of general management training ground. You don't literally have P&L responsibility, but you end up touching all these components. You start thinking like, how do you run a team? There's a great skill there in terms of how you bring together a whole team to succeed. How do you inspire people who have skills in areas you don't, to do things you couldn't do, to work together to produce something that you couldn't have done by yourself, or frankly, any of you couldn't have done by yourself. And so usually, product management, frankly, I think product management is a great background to be an entrepreneur. I think it's a great background to be a general manager. I do think you can end up a functional leader. And I think that, of course, you can end up a CEO, and there's a lot of examples of that as well. So.
And when Adam was pointing me, I'm not a functional leader these days. But I think just one contrast to kind of what Craig said is, I think a lot of how many people in the room are founders right now, and how many people are founders? There's a number of people who are founders. How many people have joined some company and are kind of still working there, working with the team? I assume most other people. I've always found my career, part of being product manager is this great opportunity to join some founder on this vision and this quest, and really get to join them and helping them realize that vision and be part of the team that takes that founding vision and really helps the larger and larger team actually get the company closer and closer to that. And so one of the things that a lot of people who are kind of career product managers have done is, you kind of shift from company to company. You get started at one place, and that after that company gets to a certain stage, you kind of might move on to another one. And in that kind of role, when you think about it that way, if you don't want to go down the founding path or necessarily the CEO and general manager path, that's kind of how I ended up in venture, because I realized what I was better at was kind of finding those journeys and getting involved in really helping them scale versus necessarily going to start my own journey or be able to be operational like a great general manager. So just want to say there's lots of different paths, and if anybody is thinking about the venture path, come grab me. We're starting to try to add a little bit to our Greylock team too. So it's kind of an open invitation for this esteemed group here. One last question that came to me as we were talking was after we were doing the MBA question, someone texted me and said, how many people in the room have MBAs? So I'm actually just curious. Raise your hand if you have an MBA. So quite a bit, which I think it's actually a great balance that, look, on the panel, everybody here has an MBA except for me, who at least started. So, MBA is not necessarily a bad judgment against product management. It's just, I think Adam said it best, the people who are MBAs aren't the people we really want as product managers in our tech companies. So a couple minutes for questions, then we're going to move on to our next speaker. Go ahead. Well, so the question was, how does a product manager have influence over sales and marketing part of the organization, which is really where they have the revenue generation and kind of all that responsibility. Okay. And then do you think there's a need for an MBA, in product or in other roles if the product has more influence? Anyone want to take that for how you have influence over sales and marketing?
All I'm going to say is I think the answer is different in consumer companies and enterprise companies. Most consumer companies, the seat of power tends to be on the product side because that's actually what controls most of distribution and success. And so most consumer companies that are successful have a rule where the salespeople can't sell things that they don't have. That puts less pressure. It has the starts with the product side. Enterprise companies, it is not uncommon for enterprise companies to sell first and then kind of need to fulfill the contract. It's not a great culture. I can't say it hasn't been successful in the past because it has. But it's actually not different. It's part of speaking all these languages. Like you talked about influence. I always think, I actually have like almost a dozen endorsements, I think, on my LinkedIn profile for Jedi Mind Trick. But speaking everyone's language, if you understand why brand people care about brand, you can speak to them about brand. If you understand that the only way that they're going to hit their quota next quarter is having something new to sell their existing base, if you speak their language, A, you'll probably design products that are better to make them successful, which will make the company successful. And B, they can be your biggest allies and advocates, actually. There are times where sales is very necessary marketing to let the rest of the organization know that actually prioritizing these certain things that your customers want is actually the right thing to do. So,
cool. I got the sign for one more question, but I think people will be able to stay around after, I hope. David.
So, question. Something I've seen recently in a couple of surveys is that more and more startups and smaller teams are either postponing or doing altogether, bringing on product managers. There's this concept that a disciplined, agile development process, different people kind of represent their functional areas might mean that for a lot of teams, a PM isn't necessary. And I wanted to know what you guys think about that.
So the question was, we're seeing kind of surveys and other writing that a lot of startups are now saying, we don't even need this product manager role. We'll use agile methods, we'll use other things to kind of keep everybody really in sync and have great process, and so we'll never have to hire somebody with this title, product manager, into the company. So let's have Craig take this as the
Sure. Yeah, we just hired over the last few months our first product manager, and before that it was basically me and the co-founders saying, okay, here's what we want to do, and it's a relatively small team with the engineers, and then the engineers would complain that, hey, it's not detailed enough, and you're always changing your mind, and the product's changing. So then you bring in a PM, so you get a lot of great specs and PRDs and details, and now the engineers are complaining that they're getting picked to death by details from the PM. And why the hell do we need this PM? It was great back in the days when it was just you, and you'd tell us what to do, and we'd go do it. So I think I think you need them because it is all sacrifice, a little bit of the overhead for the clarity and for having, and again, once a company starts growing beyond, 10, 12, 20, you, as a CEO, you got other issues. You're bringing on a sales team, you're bringing on a finance team, you're bringing on a PR team, you're bringing on, customer support. You got other issues than just focusing entirely on the product and spending all your time with the engineers. And you need someone who's sweating those details 24/7. You need someone that you can turn to at any point and say, what's on the roadmap, what's launching next? I know I've seen 75 emails and read 75 PRDs. I can't remember. Dude, tell me what it is. And so, yeah, I don't see it going away anytime soon.
And I'll just add on to this from kind of being the last couple of years in venture. I think there's this, at the beginning of a company, it's actually fundamental that the founder is the product manager. Like they're the one with, taking the vision, translating it, working with the team, translating the details, kind of making that bridge incredibly tight. And it's the founder and the founding team who really own that. As a company scales, I think there's a natural ratio, and you guys should all think about what this is on your team for one product manager for anywhere from 5, 10, 15, 20 engineers. Maybe it's more on certain types of projects where the product manager is busy enough that everybody feels autonomous and is enabled to work and is not being picked and poked to death, but yet things are coherent and cohesive and everybody's not saying, oh my God, what should we do? What's going on? And so there's this ratio where you need a product manager for that. So once a company starts to scale, we found that you bring in the first product manager, second product manager. But I was that first product manager at LinkedIn and one of the very first at Twitter. And coming in early as a product manager is actually it's one of the hardest jobs you can have because you're now the person who's the team is like, hey, I'm used to getting everything from the founder. Who the hell are you? And the team is, and the founder's like, hey, I'm used to just telling everyone what to do and having them do it. Like, why are you in the way, or are you slowing things down? And it's this really tricky spot. But if you then flip your mind and go, you know what? My job is to channel the founder and basically be this conduit that helps the founder scale and realize they're out financing, they're out meeting other partners or trying to recruit. You get to be this conduit that helps the team understand, hey, Reed said this or Ev said this, and this is how we were thinking about it, and kind of be that conduit all the time, and then make sure they're really up to speed. It's actually a really incredible role, I think, to be that sort of early product manager and then help bring that culture into the company. So I think I think you'll see over time that all those companies that I've seen, they'll break and they're solving product management with engineering managers who are spending 75% of their time doing product management and 25% of their time still trying to do code. And they'll all just start to break, and they'll realize this need for a person who does this thing is actually useful versus just hiding the fact that we're doing that same role anyway. So I want to take a moment and just thank Johanna, Adam, and Craig for their time and joining us tonight. And now I'm going to turn it back to Ken, who's going to bring up Peter and tell a little story of Facebook and Instagram.
We're going to bring the non-MBAs up here to set things straight. There you go. Thank you. I'm really excited to welcome Peter Deng up to the stage. Have a seat. Just to kind of give you all a quick intro. Peter joined Google in 2006, 2007. So there as
Actually, 2006, you're right.
2006. Okay, so yeah, I did my homework.
Yeah, you did.
Which is the same year I joined. That's why I remember.
Yes, that's right.
And was on the product marketing team there, and left in 2007 to go to Facebook, where he rose up to be a director of product, and then this past August moved over to become head of product for Instagram, which of course is part of Facebook. Before we kind of go into that transition, we talked a little bit about MBAs and kind of career choices, and I noticed that you were a symbolic systems major at Stanford, which is kind of furthering the theory that I have that's like wizard school for PMs. I think about Marissa Meyer, Josh, I think is SimSys,
Mike
Krieger. So, am I right?
Well, first of all,
what was that about?
do people know what symbolic systems is? Maybe not. I should probably explain it. So it's an interdisciplinary major that combines computer science, linguistics, philosophy, and psychology. Thank you. There we go. And it's a really awesome program because it just combines a lot of things that I found interesting. I actually think that I went into that because I wasn't a good coder, so I couldn't do computer science. But that is what it is. And it was really interesting because the program teaches you how to think about thinking, which is really meta. But things like linguistics, once you learn about linguistics and how words are formed in different languages and cultures, it's really just fascinating. And so we geeked out on that a lot. But yeah, I think a lot of people, I don't think it's a causation thing. I think people who tend to be attracted to symbolic systems are the people who are interested in thinking at the meta level and are interested in design. I did some HCI stuff. I did a co-term in HCI. And also have enough computer chops to know when your engineer is bullshitting you that something can't be done, right? Like it kind of combines all these things, and I have a lot of good friends who are doing that right now. So yeah.
So I was right.
Yeah, I think you're right.
School for people.
Or rather, it's like the selection. It's where people gravitate towards, and then it becomes a wizard school.
So talk to me about. I was at Google in 2007 with you, and you left to go to Facebook. And if there was a time where it certainly felt like everybody was leaving to go to Facebook at Google, but that wasn't that. That was a kind of a non-obvious choice, I think. I mean, certainly thinking to where Facebook was and where it had grown to. So that was a big decision. Obviously, had major ramifications for your career. I mean, talk to me through that. Like, how did you decide to do that? What went through your mind?
Well, so the story was I actually had a friend over for lunch at Google at the sushi cafe, which was really awesome. And the whole thing was like, hey, you should come join Google. And he was like, actually, you should come join Facebook. And so he won, and he got the recruiting bonus, which is fine. But for me, I kind of stopped learning at my job, and for me, I really value always learning and trying to improve on myself or just doing something different. And so at that point, I was like, well, I really feel like I I've learned as much as I can in product marketing. I feel like there's a lot more out there that I want to try to learn, like how to build a team. And Facebook had all the opportunity for me to do that. So that's why right now, when I talk to the people that I manage in product, I always try to figure out if they're learning or not, and if they're really engaged and really passionate about what they're doing. Because maybe it's just me projecting, but I feel like a lot of us like to learn and try something new. So that was the right time for me to do that transition. And you're right, it was a little bit ahead of the mass exodus is the wrong word, but like the influx of people into Facebook. But it was the right time for me.
You talk about you should always be learning, and I've had people say that to me, and sometimes it's hard to be introspective to know whether you're really learning. But like, yeah, I'm learning, but how do you know when you're learning? How do you know when you're learning the right things?
Yeah, I think when you get really good at your job, then you're not learning. I think when things like you can just like close your eyes and then have magic things happen, you're just not learning. And I like to open my eyes. And I like to just like see like, oh, hey, that's kind of interesting. Let me go try to do that thing. So I'm really into cooking. So like and I bring that home as well. So I try out new cuisines and cook random things. And I got like a barbecue, a big green egg recommended by a friend. It's like a huge, awesome smoker thing. And I've been smoking up a storm. And then I move on to the next thing. And, I don't have to eat it. I can have friends over. But no, it's really fun that when you're walking into a room and you're the dumbest person in the room, you know that feeling? Or you walk into, recently I went to New York, I went to Adweek, and talking to all these brand marketers, and it was just like, wow, I loved that feeling of just like asking questions and wow, you just blew my mind. Like that's how you think, that's really cool. So for me, it's just like, if you close your eyes and you can do your job, then you're probably not learning.
Well, I think a lot of it probably has to do with comfort too. I mean, I guess I used to try to avoid feeling panicked, or afraid in my job. And then I actually found out, looking back on my career, that those were the times where I was the most successful, when I was scared shitless. And so, I'm sure that's probably one sense of it too, is that if you're feeling too comfortable, you feel like things are in too much of a groove, then you're not really necessarily challenging yourself.
Totally, yeah.
So, watching Facebook from afar and your tenure there, I mean, I think the transition that certainly has amazed me the most, and you're obviously very much at the heart of this, as the former PM for Messenger and for a lot of the other mobile apps, is the transition to mobile. And I saw a quote from Zuck where he said that really you can't overstate how much the company retooled its development process, engineering process, its approach to product, and then clearly your move over to Instagram is further solidification. Talk about what that was like as a PM, part of that sea change in that corporate.
Zuck is a really good leader, and what I love about Facebook is that we're pretty unemotional about what we build, which means we always try to evaluate, is this the right thing to do right now? And at the time, the shift to mobile was happening in the world much faster than we had anticipated. And Zuck got up and said, we are a mobile-first company, and this is what it means. And as a PM, it was really liberating, because constraints are liberating, right? And oftentimes when I talk to PMs, they're like, hey, you should make a list of things you want to build, but also list out things that you don't want to do. And my favorite part is reviewing that list of things you don't want to do, because it gives you a lot of energy. It's like, yeah, we don't have to worry about blah, 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 right? And we don't have to worry about that product anymore, and we're going to shift over resources. And because the company is so open and able to talk about these things openly, it's very unemotional. It's like, look, mobile is the most important thing. These things are less important. It made it so that everyone was like gravitating towards, okay, I want to work on the most important thing. So by having that list of things that was, probably lower priority, and just being very unashamed and very open about that, you can get a lot of good work out of that. So we completely retooled the company. There were posters that were printed up about mobile first. There was statistics shared every week about how fast the shift was happening to mobile. It was a completely focused effort, and I think everyone pitched in. But because we had good leadership of what to do and not to do, I think we were able to successfully make that shift.
And how much did the kind of the dynamics of the team need? I mean, you're bringing in a different set of skill set. People were learning new skills. People were working with new technologies. I mean, how much of that was the team evolving versus bringing in new blood versus combination?
Oh, the team definitely evolved. So release process. We used to, push was this thing that since I joined in 2007, it was a weekly thing. We had hot fixes. It was just free to push code, right? Like you made a mistake. Oh, no big deal. Just submit a hotfix and we just get that pushed to servers. It'll be out for a few hours, but it'll be fine. But mobile, you ship a piece of code and that stays on that phone, maybe forever, right? Maybe, So for example, when you deprecate support for iOS 5, that last binary that you shipped of Instagram for iOS 5 is there forever for that person who isn't able to upgrade. So we had to just really rethink the way that the whole release process worked, right? There's a lot more QA. There was a lot more baking. There's a lot more dog fooding. We had to get on a cadence. They had to be time releases, not feature-based releases. So I'm not going to lie, there's a lot of pain there, but we learned a lot from that whole process, and that was really exciting. So.
Like the good old days of client software development, where you got some Windows 95 machines out there still running and
Exactly.
taking away.
Yeah.
So talk about Instagram. So you I guess August is your last few months you've moved over
Yep.
and now are ahead of product. So how'd you decide to do that? Talk me through that.
Interesting, because I've actually, my resume will say I've stayed at Facebook for 6 years, but that's true. Like my paycheck has come from Facebook for the last 6 years. But I've actually done a different job every single year at Facebook, and I really like that about our culture, right? So the shift to Instagram is actually less big of a big deal than it may seem. It seems like a different brand, but when I was at Facebook, I worked on newsfeed, I worked on profile, groups, notifications, homepage, pages, Messenger, a bunch of that stuff. And every year or every half year, I jumped to a different thing. So this was kind of jumping over to a different product, essentially, but it just has a different name. So, my desk moved literally 10 feet. I sit very close to what I said before, because we're all, photos team, messenger team, all sitting around the same place, and Instagram, I just jumped across the aisle. So it was a really good time for me. I think, just like in my previous moves from newsfeed to profile, or profile to photos, or whatever it was, I was just trying to learn a new skill and trying to make sure that I can keep my eyes open and really be challenged by the stuff I was looking at.
And you knew Kevin Systrom as well from Google. In fact,
Yeah.
when we were getting ready for this, I like I always do with former Googlers, I'm like, I'm sure we interacted at some point when you were at Google. And so I dug up old email from like 2007, you, me, Kevin Systrom, cooking up something.
Yeah.
Which is, people will say, Small Valley, and anybody that's kind of been around in technology for a while will start to kind of see the same faces and the same people again. And
Totally.
How much of a role has that played in your career? Obviously, you knew Kevin from.
Well, I knew Kevin. We were APMMs at Google. We went to a trip on a trip together to Brazil, which was fun. And I think the value is really small. Like just tonight, I ran into a lot of familiar faces, people that I knew, and even just names I recognize. I might have tried to recruit you, but you never knew. It's a small value, but I like to think of it differently. So when I went to my honeymoon in France, that was my first time in Europe, and I realized that we are kind of one company as Silicon Valley, because we pretty much build all of the stuff that the rest of the world uses in technology, right? And you go to the airport, you're like, they're on their Androids or they're on their iPhones, and they're using Facebook, they're using Google to search, they're using Yahoo, whatever it is. It's like all comes within this like little peninsula, little area that we work in. So I feel like it's a small valley, but we also end up working on the same thing, which is advancing the state of technology. And so whether you're part of the newsfeed team or the profile team, or you're part of Facebook or Pinterest, you have an opportunity to really change the way the world kind of works, and it's pretty awesome.
There's something that feels unique about Silicon Valley, because I think we've always been part of fast-growing industries. Like they're not zero-sum games. I mean, we're competitors, but we're all together, kind of growing the same thing. And I think that may be part of that kind of camaraderie you don't see in LA or in Hollywood or in Washington D.C. or in New York in the finance community, where it's much more a dollar that goes to you didn't go to me, versus hey, people are buying mobile phones, they're using my apps, they're using your apps, they're using all of our apps. Great, let's keep it going.
Totally. Yeah, the other part of that is it's I think the average tenure here, you just look at this is the numbers, right? It's like 2.5 or maybe 3 years. And that just means that over the course of your lifetime of working, you're going to move around a lot. And so you're going to run into a lot of familiar faces, and it's pretty awesome. The reunions are pretty fun. So when you get to be a little bit older like me, it's like you run into someone, it's like, hey, like I work with you on this thing. It's like Andreas and I worked together at Facebook. It was really awesome. And we ran together, tonight at this dinner. So it's just, if you look at just the numbers and how things shake out, you're bound to work again with somebody else at a different company. Your paths will cross.
And the mobility part of it is, I mean, you talked about the kind of average tenures, and certainly, it sounds like at Facebook, they encourage you to move around. Google, we certainly do. I mean,
Yeah.
people kind of get, a little agitated when you've been on the same project for more than 2 years, and they say, hey, time to start moving around.
Right.
How do you counsel PMs on your teams at Facebook around looking for new opportunities? I mean, how do you help them realize when it's time to move, even if it may not be to your advantage, right? If you're
No,
losing
totally.
something great.
No,
to the
it's
team.
it's true. And actually, I met with a couple people that I worked with just yesterday who are off doing startups now, and I saw their demos. It's really awesome, and it's great that they're creating things for the world. I think in coaching people to move around, I think it's a lot about finding and understanding yourself about what it is that, let's say you're discontented or you're not so happy with your job. Why is that feeling coming? Right? Is it because you don't like the person you're working with on the engineering side? Is it because you don't believe in the vision of the product anymore? There's a lot of different reasons, and so the first thing I really want to teach is introspection for a lot of people I work with, and being able to keep on digging deeper into yourself until you find that true core, either value of that you have or the reason that you are unhappy. And so that's where a lot of that stuff comes from. At Facebook, we also created this rotational PM program where we decided to have people rotate a lot faster. So in 1 year, they'll go on 3 projects, which is pretty fast, every 3 months. And the goal of that is to basically show that it's okay to move around. And it's actually kind of fun. And when you do a restart, here are the skills that you need to have to build those relationships really quickly. So.
And I think that you've told me something before around, even if you don't feel like you're actively looking for a new job, you should be interviewing. You should be looking at it. Rather than running from something, you should be running
to something for sure. Yeah, I think so. This is actually one of our HR people told me this, and I thought this was really awesome. She tells her team every year to go out and interview for jobs, because the act of staying at your current job is a decision, and I think a lot of people treat that as a non-decision. It's like, oh, it's just I wake up, I shower, I go to work, right? But you're making a decision every single day you're walking through that door. It's like, I choose to be here, and the minute that you kind of do it blind and with your eyes closed, you're probably not learning things, or you're probably just getting into a routine that maybe it's not making you happy. So really choose to be there. Like if you every year think about it as like, is this a thing that I want to do? For me, every 6 months I go back to this Google Doc I have, which is 7 things I want to do with my life, and kind of things that principles I live by, and I kind of revisit that and saying like, am I being true to this? Like one of it is like always be learning, right? So it's good to have that calendar reminder pop up on my personal calendar, be like, yeah, it's time to review that now, and just be mindful of, do I like what I'm doing today?
Interesting is, I was thinking about my career, and I kind of fell into the product management in a lot of ways, and it's great how the profession has matured to the point where people are saying, hey, I want to be that, I want to learn from that, and I have a lot of people ask me about, how do I find a good mentor? How do I find a good, PM mentor? And I was like, I wish I had a PM mentor. I mean, talk to me about the role of, in your career of good mentors, people that kind of helped you get to where you are, and then how much, you spend with a more up and coming PM.
Yeah, I think for me, my biggest realization is that you can't have one mentor, because I started seeing faults in my mentors. I used to be like, oh my God, this person's so awesome, and hold them up on a pedestal, and they're so great. And then I start seeing the cracks. I'm like, wait, but this person sucks at this. And then I realized this thing was like, I had a string of mentors. It was like, it started crushing me. It's like, they're not perfect. But then no one's perfect, And so like having knowing sort of what type of mentorship you get from someone, what value you get from someone. Maybe someone's a really good speaker and a really good storyteller, but not very good at the details, and maybe you really want to work on the details. Just trying to notice a little bit of like what people do well, and what parts of them you admire, and seek out lots of people like that.
I think it's used to have people who help you with your blind spots too.
Yeah.
I mean, mine has always been people skills, interpersonal kind of, and it's always been good to have those people that are just like, when you leave the room, you think everything went great. The ones that come up to you and be like, yeah, you kind of pissed a lot of people off back there. You should be careful. And
exactly.
You kind of have to augment those skills. And
Exactly.
So
I mean, my best analogy is like, I'm a huge football fan. I might not look like one, but I am. And also, how many people went to Stanford here? How crazy it is that we are good at football. Isn't that weird? Anyway, so my favorite person on the football team is the coach. Because it's like, you look at the guy, it's like, this guy can't block and tackle worth shit. But he's sitting there screaming and yelling. It's like, this is what you did wrong. But that's what I think is really cool about like being a PM or even being a manager, is that you get to be the person, not screaming, but just more kind of pointing out like, hey, did you realize your back foot's a little, your back right foot's a little bit weak? You know, you might want to do some exercise to get that strong. Like, that's really awesome, right? And the fact that these 300-pound football players respect this puny little guy is really kind of cool. So seek out people who will be really honest with you, who aren't afraid to hold back and just say, this is what I think you can be doing better. And those are the people that I value. Is people who can be really straight with me, and those are the people who make me better.
That's great. So one more question, and then we'll wrap, so we all have time to chat some more, and,
Cool.
and nobody's going to kick you out, so please hang around. So where's Peter Deng in 10 years? Where do you go?
I think I'll be doing something completely different, just knowing me. I think, I've always wanted to open a butcher shop, so that's a possibility.
It's different.
It's very different. But I don't know, I think hardware is coming up as a really interesting area, a really interesting space now. And I think with a lot of the manufacturing wins, as soon as we figure out how to manufacture things at scale that don't involve mass machinery and retooling of stuff, I think there's going to be a lot of interesting things going on there. So I think, maybe in hardware, maybe at a butcher shop, cutting up meat. But we'll kind of see. But I want to make sure that I keep on learning things and try things that are different.
New hardware mobile extensions for butchering.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's actually probably that's what I'll be. I'm going to call it now. Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you so much, Peter, for being here. Let's give him a round of applause. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
And I want to thank you all, and this was just amazing. It was great to see the turnout. We're going to do more of these, because I think part of what we wanted to test was, are people interested in coming to these if we hold them? And I think you voted with your feet, so that's a clear sign that it's at least worthwhile to continue to do this. So I want to thank you so much for being here, and hope you enjoyed yourself, and please stick around and chat. I'm not going to spend a lot of time up here. I want to turn it over to Josh, who's going to start with the panel. And then after we do the panel, I'm gonna bring Peter up on stage.
Thanks, Ken. And guys, thanks all for coming out. Like, when I was a product manager kind of through most of my career, I was always amazed at how little I met other product managers at other companies, just because you meet so many people inside your company all the time, and you're doing all that. And so we did this conference back in April that I hope some of you were able to attend, and then we try to do this tonight, just to kind of create events mostly for you guys to meet each other and to interact and hopefully build connections kind of that'll both help trade tips and tricks and create sort of, careers over time as people go in and out of different companies. So that's really the goal. And so we'll try to keep this content short, but we thought it'd be fun to kind of at least have some discussion to kind of, as people have kind of been through pretty long careers in product management, sort of give back some of our great lessons learned too. So I'd love to bring up our panel. Joanna Wright, who's a VP of Product Management at Google. Johanna, I should ask to pronounce names next time, checklist. Johanna Wright, who's a VP of Product at Google. Adam Nash, who's a CEO at Wealthfront. And then Craig Walker, who's the...
Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. My name is Ken Norton. I'm the guy whose name is on everybody's badge here, except my own, so I had to go grab one. So if anybody causes any damage, I'm the one that's going to get blamed. Thank you for coming tonight. I'm really tremendously excited to see the turnout and all these folks here. Josh and I had coffee a few months ago, and we were like, we should do an event for PMs in our portfolios. And we'll get 15, 20 people and have some dinner. And we started sending out emails, and we said, actually know quite a lot of people in the portfolios, and then we encouraged you to invite each other, and then all of a sudden we had a huge room full of folks. So I think that speaks to both the caliber and the folks that we have in our portfolio, and I think also just the demand for PMs to meet other great PMs and to share ideas and share notes. And so I think that the purpose of tonight is really for you to meet each other and mingle and network. And so we have some conversation up here around PM career and whatnot, but the main purpose to get you all together was to really meet each other and for us to meet you and for us to just have a great night together. So
I was just laughing. Yeah. Sorry, I was laughing just back in. And then, there we go. I was laughing at the fact that then you became a product manager and realized that he didn't know it. He was all faking it.
Yeah.
I think I followed a fairly typical path into product. I came out of Stanford as an engineer, computer science, did a co-term in human-computer interaction, so a little bit more design biased. Wanted to start out actually building software, and so I joined a company called Next, which managed to get acquired by Apple before my start date. So actually,
I hear they had really good music on Next.
yeah. Yes, I didn't get the street cred of ever having a Next badge, though. Although I did get one of the cool T-shirts they had of the Next logo eating the apple, because that was the scuttlebutt that Next really acquired Apple. In any case, I was a software engineer. I was working on frameworks, web objects. And similar to you, actually, I was looking around at jobs and realizing that, as an engineer at a big company, I wasn't really having a lot of influence over the design of the product. I was doing the interface layer, but not making those decisions.
And I kind of won because we both ended up math majors. But by the time I was graduating from college, I'd taken a lot of CS classes, and I heard that you could make a lot of money programming, and I was pretty excited about that. So I took a job as a programmer in a small startup that supported Wall Street. So financial, foreign exchange options trading software is what the company I worked at built. And then I worked in a bunch of startups in New York. So when I was working at this firm, though, they had us meet all of the executives, and I met Tom, who was a product manager, and I was like, wow, that guy knows what we should be building. That would be pretty awesome if I knew what we should be building. So from then on out, I knew I wanted to be a product manager. He just seemed so amazing. I didn't really ever interact with him. It just seemed like the awesomest job. He knew what we should build. I had no idea what we should build. I just kind of did it. So so that's what I always wanted to be. Maybe is that enough? Is like I just talk forever.
And so Adam, kind of walk us through a little bit of your early career and how you fell into product management. Founder and CEO of FireSpotter Labs, or Uber Conference. So the goal of this is really just to kind of discuss sort of career paths, because one of the questions when I meet a lot of young product managers these days is like, okay, great, so I joined a company and I worked on some products for a while, like, what do I do next? Like, what is the career path? And so, I'd love kind of each of you just to start, like, walk us through your career a little bit, and really, like, how did you decide or kind of fall into your current role? And sort of what kind of things, in your product career sort of got you there? I don't know if I'm going to start with you, Johanna.
I think I probably am. Can you hear this? Okay. Sometimes you can just talk and talk and talk like this. What's the story of my career? So I studied math in school, and I didn't really use computers at all. And my best friend across the hall, we were really cool, and she really loved computers. I really loved math. So she was like, why don't you come to my computer science class? So I was like, no, you should come to my math class. So she introduced me to computer science, and